Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the College Weekend Wrap-Up. I'm National Scouting Supervisor, College Supervisor, Vinny Servino, and I'm joined by a fellow Perfect Game National Scouting Supervisor, Brian Sikowski. Brian, how's it going, man?
Good, buddy. Good weekend of college ball.
Yeah, a lot of excitement, a lot of action. Some of the top teams kind of having business as usual, but we also had some ranked matchups. So why don't we just dive right ahead into it? TCU and Texas matched up. As we've noted on this program before, this is the third straight weekend of Texas's kind of gauntlet of the Big 12, so to speak, with Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas Tech, and they finish it off, obviously, with TCU. I don't know if you caught any of this on TV, but super entertaining series. Games 1 and 2, really big back and forth affair. Game 1 was 5-4 Texas, and Game 2 was 2-1 TCU. A lot of push and pull, a lot of give and take, really showing that these are two of the top 10 teams in the country. And then Texas kind of explodes onto the scene on Sunday. They score 9 runs. Zach Zubia goes deep twice. He's been a mainstay in that program for a long time. So Texas really kind of finishing the season out hot, especially after losing last week. They've kind of rebounded nicely here, and they're looking like a consensus top 5 team in the country. Elsewhere, we had Florida State with a massive upset of Notre Dame. This is the first series that Notre Dame has lost all year in ACC play. Parker Messick was terrific on Friday night, and he's really just been a revelation for the Seminoles. Truly been one of the better pitchers, not only in the ACC, but in the country. He's really kind of established himself as a second-year left-hander. And Notre Dame's able to split the doubleheader. They played the doubleheader on Saturday because of weather. So Florida State takes 2 out of 3 from Notre Dame, who was previously the number 3 team in the country. So that creates a little bit of mayhem there at the top of the ACC rankings. Florida State's still got kind of a long hill to climb if they want to win the regular season on that side of the conference. Notre Dame and Louisville still very well positioned there, but definitely a statement win by the Seminoles. And as we noted kind of in our weekend preview too, there was a lot of other 1 versus 2 matchups throughout the country in some smaller conferences. And Zach, that's what I'll kick it over to you for. Tell me about Ball State and CMU in the battle for the MACtion title.
Well, that's why I'm on the show, right? Is to talk about the MAC.
As a resident MAC expert.
Right. Ball State and CMU, that's 1 versus 2. Actually, the inverse, CMU number 1, Ball State number 2 in the MAC standings. They came into the weekend with CMU ahead by a game and a half, and they leave the weekend with CMU ahead by a game and a half. They split the 4-gamer. It was really competitive back and forth throughout. The CMU took the first 2. Ball State came back to take the second 2. Really good starting pitching in both instances.
Yeah.
John Baker for Ball State. Chase McDermott's a guy that's climbing up boards, draft boards. He's another arm. And at CMU, it's the Jordan Patty who pitched a perfect game not all that long ago. Andrew Taylor, who's one of the better sophomores in the country. Cam Brown is a veteran. He's been there for a long time. And that is a veteran club there at CMU as well. But it's those 2 schools, they're still kind of running away with the MAC. Western Michigan's hanging around a little bit. Ohio's hanging around a little bit. But if you look at the paths that each CMU and Ball State have the rest of the way, with CMU with that game and a half lead, they have to play Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, and Toledo to close out. So, like, strong club, then not so great, not so great. Ball State, on the other hand, has to close out the season with Kent State, Ohio, and Miami. All of which are
a little bit tougher,
pretty strong clubs. So they have to play well. CMU has to not slip up, and that conference title and the bid may go the Chippewas' way. But either way, there's a lot that could still happen, and those are some good schools that each team has to play going down the stretch.
And I will say, from a draft perspective, don't sleep on the MAC. We've talked about it before. Chase McDermott, Ball State, Luke Albright, Kent State, Joe Rock, Ohio, and Sam Bachman, Miami of Ohio, just to name a couple, all in the top 150 on our draft board. So guys that are definitely legitimate prospects in a legitimate conference. So definitely an entertaining one as we head down to the wire.
Sam Bachman might be a top 10 pick. We don't know.
Hey, check our latest mock draft. You'll find him at 8.
Exactly. Good plug.
Wrapping up some of the other small conference stuff. UC Irvine takes 3 or 4 from UC Santa Barbara. As I've talked about before, UCSB was a top 10 team heading into the season. Michael McGreevy, Rod Booth, 2 of the better pitching duos in the country. Irvine comes off beating Oregon State 2 weeks ago to kind of make a statement and kind of solidify that lead in the Big West. Liberty sweeps Kennesaw State. Liberty continues to really impress and be kind of one of those better Virginia-oriented teams. and they've almost assuredly locked up the ASUN, barring some sort of unexpected collapse there. And then ECU takes 3 or 4 from a ranked Tulane team who was rolling coming into this weekend. And so ECU now takes the winning percentage lead in the American Conference. Obviously, their national resume is a bit longer and a bit better than Tulane's, but in terms of conference wins, they are now ahead of them. Going elsewhere, we'll talk about the Pac-12 for a little bit. Stanford beat Arizona 2 of 3 games, and it was kind of a tale of 3 different games almost, for lack of a better term. Game 1 was on Friday night, and they went, I think it was 12 or 13 innings, and Stanford finally walked them off there up in Northern California, so a good win by them. And then Arizona comes down and absolutely clobbers Stanford game 2, a 20-2 final score. We've talked about this before. Jacob Berry, Daniel Susak, kind of 2 of those top 2022 guys leading the charge for the Wildcats. And then game 3 comes and Stanford is able to win that. So they've kind of almost secured pole position. They'll end up as the top ranked team in the Pac-12 heading into next week's rankings, but obviously still very fluid. It's kind of been those 2 teams and Oregon who have kind of solidified themselves near the top of the Pac-12. And then wrapping it up with some SEC talk as always. Arkansas had a little bit of a test this weekend. Georgia, who has been one of the hotter teams towards the back end of their SEC slate, obviously beating Vanderbilt a couple weeks ago, gave Arkansas all they could handle this weekend. The Razorbacks come out on top, win 2 of 3. One of the big storylines from this weekend for me was the continued excellence of Arkansas reliever Kevin Kopps, who's now in his, I believe it's his 5th year. He's kind of been the fireman reliever for Coach Dave Van Horn and staff, kind of been plug and place into the most high leverage situations they can find. He finishes with over 7 innings pitched on the weekend. Zach, why don't you give me a little bit more on Kopps?
Yeah, the numbers are absurd when you really look into it. And it's, just look at Twitter and you can see that he's having a good year. It's not that hard to know that. But when you really dive in, like, my man has 22 appearances on the season, and that equates to 49 and 2/3 innings. Like you said, he's very much the fireman. He leads the team in appearances. He's got a 0.72 ERA, which equates to 4 earned runs on the season. That's 4 runs overall. It's not like he's given up a bunch that haven't counted against him. 30 hits, 13 walks. That's a sub-1 whip, and 83 strikeouts. 83 strikeouts in less than 50 innings. In the SEC, who else could even say that? No one, right? That's absurd.
It's kind of freaky numbers, man. I mean, when you're talking about SEC relievers, it's almost him and Landon Sims kind of in that same conversation. And speaking of Sims, Mississippi State takes care of business against South Carolina. They take 2 of 3 from the Gamecocks, who have been scuffling as of late. Vanderbilt takes 2 from Alabama in a shortened series. Tennessee takes care of business near the top. One team I wanted to touch on, too, before we left, Ole Miss. So they were scuffling heading into the weekend before last weekend's series victory. They lost 4 SEC series in a row, and now they may be without Gunnar Hoglund, the staff ace, for a while. Zach, what do you got on the Rebs?
Yeah, they were my national championship pick heading into the season.
Sure.
Felt pretty confident about that. I was promised some things by the Ole Miss fans if my prediction had come true as far as hospitality at their ballpark.
Of course. Beer Swayze.
Yeah, and it's like you said, man, Hoglund, that's a bummer. Like, that's a bummer. That's the dude that we put it, and we're not even talking about Ole Miss specifically here. That's the guy that we have as the 3rd best college pitcher in the class on our draft board. You don't want to see that anyways, but to be yanked quickly after missing a start, and it's an arm, and we're not speculating, but either way, that's not good news. So then the starting pitching depth becomes the thing for Ole Miss, and obviously Nikhazy's been really good. Nikhazy's been great. You have your guy on Friday, no problem. But behind him, whether that's Drew McDaniel, whether that's Derek Diamond, whether that's whoever can start a game on the weekend for Ole Miss, that's where you need that. Someone's got to step up and be the dude. They need to start taking 2 out of 3 down the stretch,
Yeah, when you're talking about a conference where you're going to have, and obviously we didn't mention this, but Jack Leiter had to start scratch due to an innings workload, trying to maintain that. But when you're talking about maybe being in a regional, super regional College World Series, and you got Kumar Rocker going on Friday nights, Jack Leiter's going on Saturday nights. You want that second ace to kind of be there. I think as an Ole Miss fan, you feel a lot more comfortable when it's Gunnar Hoglund suiting up against Jack Leiter as opposed to a Drew McDaniel or Derek Diamond. And again, no slight on those guys, but Gunnar Hoglund before the injury, probably a top 10 pick.
For a reason. And the offense is not the problem. It's like an 870 something OPS as a team. That's a really strong number in a conference like the SEC. That's a really strong number, regardless of conference. As far as a team impact, and Tim Elko coming back and hitting a tank off of one leg, like that's cool too. That's energizing. But man, got to have it. Got to have the starting pitching step up. Got to have the bullpen depth step up, and they're just gonna have to figure it out. They're too talented not to, though, in my opinion.
Speaking of too talented to not figure it out, one new team in the rankings this week, Zach, and that is the UCLA Bruins, the preseason number 4 team, returning to the top 25. Like we've said since the preseason of college baseball, UCLA has one of the most talented rosters in the country. Hopefully they're figuring it out now, putting it together down the stretch as we head towards, the end of the Pac-12 and beginning of regional play. They'll almost assuredly be in a regional for sure, but kind of how far they go will be dictated by how much that talent can turn into on-the-field success.
No doubt. And doesn't hurt that they're led by a guy like Matt McClain, who looks like he'll be a top 20, top 15 pick heading into the draft. And obviously Kevin Kendall's raking there too, but yeah.
And McClain's actually one of the bigger wild cards. We'll have to see how he comes back from a broken thumb.
Yep. That's a tough blow for UCLA for sure.
I am Vinny Servino. He's Brian Sikowski. We will see you here next week. Be sure to pay attention to perfgame.org, where we have a ton of content for you, as well as our college player database that has full-on reports, video, tweets, everything you can want, and a full breakdown of a player.